Hey, it's AU5. I like to find plugins and use them in ways that they weren't necessarily intended for, especially free plugins that can do things that can replace paid plugins. In this video, I'm going to be covering 5 different plugins from the Melda Free Effects bundle and show you some techniques that I discovered that are really useful for sound design and also may replace some paid plugins so you don't have to spend your money. Check this out. Here is a demo loop that I made that I'm going to be demonstrating these techniques with these plugins on. Utility. Something that I find very useful is the delay. The beat is now delayed from the instruments. I can hit report as latency and it will delay everything else except the beat. This snare actually has a clap layer to it. Here's the clap layer. If I want to create kind of a flam pre-shift clap effect, instead of using audio in my timeline, lining it up with the snare, and then moving it earlier in time to create a pre-shift effect, I can just put Mutility on the actual clap sample, hit report as latency, and then I can adjust the amount of milliseconds that I want the clap to pre-shift before the snare. So let's try 22 milliseconds. Now the clap is hitting slightly before the snare. What this is doing is introducing a little bit of latency to the entire session. With this amount, it's pretty negligible. I also find that this can be useful for latency compensating plugins that don't report latency or report latency accurately. Also for max for live modulation, such as using MIDI follower, where there is a little bit of delay that is not compensated because of max for live. Charm Verb. Now this is a seemingly simple reverb, but it has a designer section down here that lets you get various effects that can be a bit more than just reverb. If I turn the size all the way down and increase the length, increase the gain a bit. I could also adjust the high and low damp. Which is really convenient. And turn the complexity down. Now I have an inharmonic resonator that's also really stereo as well. This is great for sound design. By adjusting the delay minimum and the delay max, I can get these really cool atonal bell-like effects. And adjust the length, just shorten it up a bit. If I put this on the bass line and turn the filter on this bass off, you just get these really cool metallic effects. Let me put this on just the beat. I can also adjust the random seed to get totally different sounds just on a whim. And bring some of the dry back in. This is a great way to introduce some resonances, natural sounding resonances to an otherwise really static sounding snare sample. And then with the complexity really high, you just get this great, super dense, diffused reverb. Really underrated plugin. Equalizer. This really just seems like a simple, unassuming EQ. You have 6 different bands that you can choose from. If you right-click them, you have different band settings like so. really nothing special until you go down to this harmonic section here. I'm gonna decrease the Q factor, and I'm gonna mute these Rhodes for a sec. So right now I have a peak filter, but if I start increasing the harmonics parameter, you'll see that these other bands emanate above this frequency band. And with the adjusting the frequency, you can get a really cool, unique kind of comb filter. But it doesn't end there either. I can adjust the semitones parameter and adjust the spacing of them. Also, if I enable linear, it's going to create harmonic gaps as opposed to just logarithmic gaps. Right now, these are just peak filters. If I want to eliminate the dry signal entirely, what I can do in Ableton is create an effects rack and then use a utility and then invert the polarity of the input channels. And now all I'm going to get is the delta. And I can map these to macros. Now I can really have fun with this as a super flexible, zero latency analog comb filter. M phaser. Now, this is a really nice flexible phaser. You have up to 100 different poles, so you can get just extreme phaser effects. However, a really cool use for M phaser is to utilize all of the all-pass filters that are inside of the phaser and basically create a disperser for free. When you bring the wet to 100% and the feedback all the way down to silence, this is creating a signal that is purely the phase shifted signal. This does not affect the frequency response. It only affects the phase response. So right now we have, in this case, because it's at 100 different all-pass filters that are moving around the frequency spectrum and creating this frequency dispersion. Now to actually turn this into a static disperser is map the max and min frequencies together. And if I also macro the mode to a different macro, now I have a depth control. At 1, it's only just a one-pole all-pass filter. As I increase the mode, listen to the kick drum. This is a really extreme and free disperser. M ratio MB. MB stands for multiband. By default, it doesn't do anything. It gives you a 3-band split, which you can solo, the low, the mid, and the high. But if I right-click here into the band configuration, we have a bunch of different crossover options. And this is really cool and useful because we can do things like linear phase crossovers. You don't get any phase shift if you're trying to do band splits. Something really valuable about this that is underrated is these crossovers down here. Spectrum and tonal/transient. These are not typical frequency band splits like we're used to. These actually split the spectrum into spectral components depending on how loud they are or how transient or tonal they are. So for instance, if I set it to spectrum mode, what this is doing is creating a spectral gate. Now, everything below -3 dB is being cut out. It's going into this band. If I solo this band, you can hear everything that's passing through. And if I solo this top band, everything above -3 dB is passing through. And you have different parameters here, such as smoothing. So you get less fine frequencies to come through. It's much more coarse frequencies. In this case, I'm isolating the drums. And you also have spectral resolution as well. And this is just the FFT size. You can bring it up really high and get like data loss type effects with it. and it reconstructs perfectly when they're combined. You can also create an effect rack soloing the low band and the high band, and have effects just on the components that are louder than the threshold. Super cool. Now, there's also the tonal/transient crossover, which is very similar, except it uses a transient detector with these transient release and resolution parameters. So I can isolate the drums from this whole signal. And I can solo the tonal components. That's pretty cool. And there's also the spectral resolution. Get a smaller block size going. Really cool for sound design. I hope you like this video. This is actually an excerpt from my School of Bass course, which is a sound design masterclass. And in there, I go over a dozen different Melda-free effects plugins and how to use them more in depth than what I just demonstrated. So if you're interested in leveling up your sound design game, check out the School of Bass masterclass, link in description. I'll see you next time. Peace.